Hi, I'm John Heineman, the owner of Red River Restorations. Today we're going to be discussing the steps that we go through when we restore historic wood windows, as well as answering some frequently asked questions. Let's first start by talking about the parts of a window. Not everybody uses the same language when they talk about windows. So here is a typical double hung window, which means this sash, which is the lower sash, which goes up and down. This is the upper sash, so the sashes are the parts that move. The glass, of course, is the pane. And then you have a jamb around the window, which the sashes sit in. You, of course, have a sill, an upper sill and a lower sill. Now, you have right here, this is called the inner stop. That creates part of the track that the sash sits in. Between the two sashes, you have what's called a parting bead. And on the outside of the window, you have outer stop. Now, what you'll see here is glazing, or glazing putty. So this is a piece of glass without glazing putty, so you'll see these little triangles right here. Those are called glazing points, and then you use glazing putty over the glazing points to secure the glass. So I'm often asked, what are the steps and what is the process that you go through when you're restoring the window? So I'm going to go through that process now. So the first step in the process is we remove the sashes from the jamb, remove the parting bead and stop from the jamb, and we do a thorough investigation of the jamb to see if there's any issues that need to be dealt with. So once the sashes are out, we want to seal up the opening really well. So we can use plywood, we can use an opaque material, we can use a clear material if you need natural light inside of the building. But our goal is to seal up the window opening really well so there isn't air infiltration during the restoration process. So once the window openings are sealed, all the sashes are transported to the shop. We put metal number tags on them, so throughout the process we know exactly where that sash came from and where it goes back to. So once we have the sashes in the shop, the restoration process begins. We remove the paint and glazing from the sashes and the other window parts and take them down to bare wood. We use a steam oven for the most part to do that process of removal. So the glass is then removed from the sash. It is labeled and soaked and cleaned. So once the paint and glazing have been removed from the sash, it's time to sand this sash, clean it up. This profile right here, which looks like edging or a decorative molding on the inside of the sash, is cleaned up very carefully. And if there are repairs that need to be done, sashes need to be rebuilt, it's done at that time. Now, while all of this is going on in the shop, we need to do field work as well. So we don't typically take the jamb out of the building. The jamb stays in place. So we'll go there and we'll do our scraping, sanding, priming, painting. If we have a rotten sill where we need to replace part of that or patch part of that, we can treat that with a borate-based preservative to kill the rot, and we can fix that. If the sill is really bad, we can replace the sill. The sides of the jamb we call jamb legs. Often they will rot at the bottom, so we can replace the jamb leg as needed during that time too. So by the time the sashes come back to the building, the jambs have been restored fully, the sills, the painting has been done, and of course the sash cord has been replaced, so you have fresh sash cord ready to hang the sashes. So let's talk about weather stripping next. Weather stripping is a high priority for a lot of our clients, and it's an important part of our process. The method that we use is called concealed interlocking weather stripping, and we want to accomplish 3 or 4 things with weather stripping. Eliminate air infiltration, minimize noise, we want the sashes to open easily, and we don't want them to rattle in a high wind or a storm. It's called concealed interlocking because you don't see it. When the window is closed, you don't see it. When you open it, you'll see the sashes are now sitting on a metal track. Picture a monorail train, it's a single track, and the sashes are slotted and they slide on this track. It definitely helps with the function, and it really is effective. It's also, this type of weather stripping has been in use and been manufactured since the mid to late 1800s, so for a lot of the buildings that we work on, it's historically correct. One other thing I want to point out about the weather stripping is you have the monorail track, or the track on these sides, the 2 sides and the sill side. Where the 2 sashes come together is called a meeting rail. So this is a meeting rail and this is a meeting rail. Where the 2 come together, they actually interlock. And I have another visual aid to demonstrate that. One piece is curved and one piece is straight. And so when the window is closed, these 2 lock together. And that's important because a lot of the air infiltration happens right here at the middle of the window where the 2 sashes come together. So before we prime and paint the sashes while the parts are still bare wood, We treat everything with a borate-based preservative. This helps do two things in the future. One, prevent rot, and two, insect infestation. So next we prime and paint the sashes. We reinstall the glass with glazing putty and glazing points, and there's some curing time. So once the paint and the glazing have cured, it's time to finish the painting. An very important step is painting the glazing lines correctly so that the glazing lasts a long time. A common issue is that the glazing fails way too early. So the way to prevent that is to paint the glazing in such a way, you paint it by hand, you want the paint here to flow onto the glass. Just a 1/16 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch, not to where you really see it from the inside, but that creates a seal that protects this glazing. If you were to come back with a razor blade and clean up that line or use masking tape, you never seal the paint to the glass protecting the glazing, which is a big issue with historic windows. So that's an important step that we go through. Okay, so at this point the sashes are restored, the jambs have been restored at the job site. It's time to transport the sashes back and reinstall them in their correct locations with their new weather stripping. So the final step in the process is once the sashes are installed and everything is back together, fine-tuning and touch-up. One thing to note is this is the process that we typically go through. These are the steps, but they are often modified as needed based on the project that we're working on. So next I want to answer a few frequently asked questions. One of the questions I get a lot is how long will this process take? We can certainly give a projection of that once I know about your specific project. But as an example, if we were working on a historic courthouse and there were 60 windows in a group and we were doing a typical process and restoration, typical conditions, it usually would take us about 6 weeks to go through 60 windows. So a question I'm often asked is, can you or do you replace the original glass with a low E glass or double pane glass? And the answer is no, for many reasons. One is the aesthetic would be completely different. It wouldn't be authentic and it wouldn't look historic. But number two, the double pane glass is more than a ½ inch thick typically, and there isn't space in the sash for something that thick. So it just wouldn't fit. Now, I think it's a misperception that you lose so much energy through the glass. Certainly you lose some. But where you lose most of your performance is on the gaps around the window. So if you have gaps at the meeting rail and at the sill, and if the sash doesn't fit right, you have a lot of air coming around the sash, that's really where the performance drops off, not necessarily the glass. Now there are things that you can do to increase the performance of the window besides replacing the glass with a double pane glass. Something that's often done is window film. And it's not the window film that you're picturing, in a car that's very dark. You can put window film on the original glass that you cannot see, but it's extremely effective in blocking energy transfer. The other one is an interior storm window, and it's fairly invisible, it's lightweight and easy to take off, but it sits on the inside of the window and it creates a dead air space that's also very effective. So I'm often asked where we are able to provide our services, and the answer is Texas and the states surrounding Texas. Another question that I get is, do we do small jobs where it's 1 window or 5 windows? And the answer is no. We specialize in large-scale projects and we don't typically do jobs that are that small. I often find us working with clients that their primary concern is the history of the building, the story of the building, maintaining the authenticity of the building. So that's what we specialize in. We certainly can build new windows and new window parts, but one of the primary goals of restoration is maintaining as much of the original material as possible, so that in the end you don't have a copy of the original, you have the original thing.